we can execute .pivot on Apache Spark dataset. What does a pivot means? So basically it's the same as we see in Excel, where we have a list of rows, and with this list of rows we want to summarize the data by both rows and columns. For example, we want to have a years summary on the rows and age summary on the columns, or bicycle types on the columns and age group on the rows. Do people between the ages of 12 to 14 prefer mountain bikes, or do they prefer gravel bikes or road bikes? So pivot tables allow us to see data aggregated by both columns and rows. And the way we use pivot tables in Apache Spark is by using the pivot method. And in the pivot method, basically we do a dataset group by, and then we pass the column that we want to group by the rows, and then dot pivot. So we can think of group by dataset dot group by as pivot by the rows, aggregate by the rows, and then dot pivot aggregate by this column. So I can say dataset group by age group, pivot dot pivot bicycle type, and this would mean dataset group by age group, group the rows by the age group, dot pivot bicycle type, group the columns by the bicycle type. And then we need to tell Spark what do exactly we want to pivot by. So if we want to count the number, so we just do dot count, and the aggregation would be of the counting. So pivot tables in Apache Spark can also be used to pivot by multiple columns. So we can have a group by some row, let's say group by age group, and this would be the row grouping. And then we can pass a pivot of an array of columns. And the way it would do this pivot is that it would, if we do a dot show to the dataset after the pivoting and the count, then we would see that we have multiple columns for each of the pivoting. Now to the next topic of how to handle nulls in Apache Spark. So for that purpose, we have the method dataset.na, open close brackets. Now we tell Spark dataset.na, now we intend to handle the nulls, but we didn't tell it yet what to do with the nulls. Okay, let's say that we take a dataset and we do dot show, and we see that some of the cells have nulls. So we tell Spark dataset.na, open close brackets, dot fill bracket 0. So dataset.na, open close brackets, dot fill bracket 0. This would mean whenever you have a null in the dataset, fill it in with a 0. We could also drop the rows with the nulls, and for that purpose you can guess it. We first do, as always, dataset.na dot drop, both of them with brackets. And we have other methods such as fill and drop, and all of them exist in the package of Spark SQL functions .dataframe.na function. So if we import this class, then we get a list of functions that we can apply to NA. In summary, we saw that Spark gives us the ability to do pivoting to our data, and we said that pivoting means to aggregate the data not only by the group by of the rows, but also by grouping the columns. And when we want to group something by columns, we call the dot pivot method on the dataset after we did a group by, where we pivoted, where we grouped by the rows. And we can also do a pivot which would accept one parameter of which column to pivot by, or multiple parameters of which multiple columns to pivot by. And also we discussed the NA, and we said that a dataset has a method .na, which tells Spark now we intend to handle NA, and we concatenate .fill0 or .drop or any other functions, which is defined in functions.dataframe NA functions.